Welcome back to our follow-up episode of the Real Teachers of Atlanta, our investigation episode. Do not miss this tea. Oh my goodness. I'm so ready. I'm Nikki. This is Joya. And this is Ty. And let's get into it.
We got the queens in the house, y'all. Real Teachers of Atlanta.
Hi, I'm Mrs. P. Smith, the Mama Bear at school. Your favorite ELA and SPED teacher, but always teaching my students about business.
I'm Miss Rose, commonly known as the snarky teacher, always ready with the good candy. The kids say I'm their favorite math teacher.
After school, it's lights, camera, action. During school hours, it's Miss Carter, the life science teacher saving lives.
We got the queens in the house, y'all. Real Teachers of Atlanta.
So why were you laughing? What was that about?
Okay, so I was laughing because when you mentioned being the principal feeling like, or the investigator, I think that you said, the investigator said that, your principal felt as though our podcast was changing the culture of the school, was impacting the culture of the school. I laugh because it is comical to me at how many principals and administrative leaders of schools believe that school culture or the responsibility of establishing a positive school culture is not their responsibility.
That's right.
That conversation, you can Google it, you can YouTube it, you can do whatever you want to. The conversation has had so much where they really want to know, like, why is this on my shoulders? Why is teachers' happiness something that's my responsibility? And I'm like, because you're the manager. And if you were in corporate, that would be your responsibility. That is literally your responsibility. Like, it's the number one job description. You need to be able to establish a positive school culture, followed by everything else. Because if your teachers aren't happy, your students won't be. But so it was comical to me because so many principals make content and literally are like crying and upset and quitting their jobs because they don't feel like it's their responsibility to do that. It's laughable to me. But what I want to know is what was done, like, before the podcast started, before we got to this point, were we prepared or what conversations maybe were prepared?
The first thing is that we created a very, very, very long and lengthy disclaimer. I mean, it was personally crafted. It was, an ant couldn't have even gotten offended by our podcast. Really, and then another thing is, Ty,
just making sure that we wasn't showing anything that represented any school that we previously was working for or had in the past.
Right.
So, just making sure that we weren't, showing anything when I'm talking about pictures we done took in the schools, pictures that we done had taken with, with shirts on. Anything that can be, related back or related back to the school we were at.
But not just from when we started the podcast, but from like even prior to. Right. Because at that point, at the same school we had been for years.
Because we read the handbook. So we know what to do and what not to do.
Everything was wiped. We really, so I just want to point out to our audience how, we really went through and combed through. I know each of our personal social media accounts and anything that was public was looked at because we understood what the ramifications could be if it was available.
Going through that contract and that employee handbook with a fine tooth. So, when we get when we got the call, it was like, okay,
here we go.
What is it about?
So you felt confident walking when you guys got the call, because I was already gone, but anyways, when y'all got the call, did you feel confident going into it because you already knew that it was pretty much airtight, or like what left you feeling like you're good to go?
Well, let me pick back up from so remember on the last episode, I went into so Ty had already gone. This was the second time. So the investigator, she was very different. So she asked me about, she said that we had changed the climate of the school. And I asked her, how did we change the climate of the school? Well,
that was already on the ground.
She said, well, you're not just a teacher. You don't want to offend your colleagues. I said, we never said anything about our colleagues. We would never do that. Our podcast is steeped and our foundation is on morals and ethics and integrity.
Right.
We know that whatever we do, our students may see. So we want to make sure that we're always holding up a very high standard when they see us. Right? So we already understood those things. So we already knew who was upset and why. It had nothing to do with students or the parents, because she kept saying, well, you know, what if the parents see, because in one episode, we were talking about our experiences with students in the classroom who were misbehaving. And she was like, well, what if one of the parents sees it? Again, you're more so concerned about me voicing my opinion about bad behavior instead of addressing the bad behavior, which is why teachers are actually leaving the school. So that went on. And she said, you know what? It was a lot of stammering, you know, because at this point, you know, I'm telling her I'm not taking down anything. The podcast as it is going to stay. She said, well, you know that you're not tenure. And so she's looking at me. And I'm looking at her.
What's tenure?
And she's looking at me. I said, okay.
So you have been there 10 years. That's what she was trying to say.
With the Trump card.
Meaning like you haven't been at the school a certain amount of invested. Right.
Like,
and so
for retirement, what she was trying to
meaning that I don't have to get a contract the next year.
Right.
Okay. So she said, you know, your principal can't, you know, she doesn't have to give you a contract. I'm looking at her. She's looking at me. Okay.
I could just imagine you. Okay. What'd she say?
Well, you know, this meeting is just, I said, all right, okay, fine. The meeting is over.
She had got up and left.
So I said, you know what? This isn't going to work. So I left.
Just joy is unmovable.
So I said, that was it. So we didn't hear anything for we were out for what, 3 weeks, a month.
That was a nice vacation.
We were out.
Longer than that.
I was out for almost a month from my students for a month.
Right.
So they left. So teachers that have caseloads in a school that is short-staffed, in a district that's short-staffed.
I had to do IEPs while I was out.
Right.
But I was told not to do them. If I didn't do them, I would not be in compliance. Right. That is how sick this whole thing is. You want me to not do IEPs, which I am contractually obligated to do. But because you're investigating, you don't want me to do them. I held all my IEPs. I worked on them. Matter of fact, she called me and she said, yeah, I called you yesterday for you to, this is like toward the end where I guess the investigation was over. I said, yeah, I was, you know, working on an IEP. Oh, well, you know, you're not supposed to do that, right? I said, well, you know that by law, I have to do that. And she said, oh, well, I think at that point, I just realized we weren't getting anywhere. Like I still had to do my job.
Do you think that they were trying to use that to say, okay, if you didn't do them, then you're out of federal compliance?
I wouldn't be surprised.
You know what I'm saying? Like trying to put you in a situation where we can say that this is why.
Right. Because going back to what Ty said, all of my evaluations from the time I started to that point have all been proficient.
Same. Right.
Every single last one of them, every AP, every single person that I had been under management of has said that, hey, you're doing a phenomenal job.
Right.
The kids love you. The parents love you. I mean, there was nothing else I could have been but the principal of the school.
Right. Agree. I mean, I'm with you.
That's how great of a job I was doing.
And then you have us in uphill wasting time on investigating me and trying to prove to your dear self on, not being an effective teacher. But like Joy said, I'm still getting emails about, can you put this out there for the kids, for the students, for work?
So
you still expecting me, like you still expecting me to create lessons and I'm at the house?
But I thought you were told not to do any work. I'm still confused.
I'm at the house. I'm in administrative leave and I got people contacting me about students needing work.
What happened to the people that weren't on administrative leave? Why didn't they do it? Why can't get somebody else to do it?
I totally stepped away.
Okay.
And that, was not my problem anymore. Mm-hmm. As a teacher, if you love what you do, sometimes it's very hard to do that particular thing, to step away. And I really had to step away because it was affecting me. We got the call to come back to work. It wasn't even clear about, we were told that we were going to come in, that we were going to get some directives, which wasn't prepared when we came back.
What?
To school, but it wasn't even. I didn't even know. I didn't even know that I was supposed to stay at the school when I went back, and so I got a phone call like, "Why you didn't stay?" I said, "No one told me," and I sent the phone call where I called to verify was I supposed to be at the school. I sent an email. I had to send all this to HR because. You trying to say I'm a no-show. You just calling me back from an investigation. The clear thing would have been, okay, we're done with this. Go back to your class.
So the investigation wasn't closed out. They just say, come back. Come pick up this paperwork. Basically.
Yeah,
pretty much. That's what I would have done. I went and picked it up and went home.
But there was no paperwork.
But see, my conversation was different. So when I went in, it was, we're in, you can go ahead and go back. It was very unclear. So I said, okay, am I going back in the classroom? Yeah, we're in, and granted, she was very pleasant, about it. She wasn't nasty or anything, but she was like, we're in third period. So I was confused as well. If I had not have asked that question, I probably would have gone home as well.
I mean, it
wasn't clear. It was weird. So
but I did want to ask the question. So when, I know that you both kind of have mentioned, like, when you went and were dealing with the investigation when it was active, how you did feel a certain sense of confidence. Like, why do you feel like you felt that way?
So I think for me, I know that when things happen, they happen for a reason. Mm-hmm. And then on top of that, I already said that I'm all of my evaluations have been proficient, all of them. I have great relationships with my students, with parents and my coworkers. So, and then also our podcast, what we were being investigated for was more so for issues with ego. Personal. And how people, it was very personal. Very personal. When it wasn't personal because we never said anything directly about, we were talking about the county. It's just that it just so happened that you all are doing those things as well. It wasn't to say, okay, let's do a podcast about our school and about our principal and about people who are APs, but they're not really APs, but they pretend to be APs, but they're dating other APs. Like, we weren't trying to do that. We didn't sit down. We weren't thinking about you. The purpose of the podcast was to help teachers who were afraid to speak. A lot of teachers who are literally high off of antidepressants and anxiety pills because they are afraid to go to school, to deal with the classrooms that aren't structured because the discipline is all out of control. Right. We were the voices for them. Yeah. It was birthed out of something very positive, and it has helped so many people. In fact, while we were on administrative leave,
a lot of things
changed. The ISS room was no longer, it wasn't the luau. Specifically, that's the semester before that. It was the luau, but this year it was very, very last semester. The discipline for the students was on lock. They started changing. You can't have lunch with if you're not in ISS, don't bother by coming. It's very serious. Like, obviously, someone from the district must have called the school and said, "Hey,"
but it was too loose. A lot of things was too loose.
So you think that speaking out made an impact? Said,
it was a lot of ego. A lot of the stuff that was being said that could not use. It was things that people were taking personal, thinking, "Oh, she's talking about me." It was very. It was you didn't. There was nothing you could say about, "Oh, she's not a great teacher. Oh, she doesn't build a relationship with her students. Oh, she don't get along with any of her coworkers." None of those things were brought up.
None of them.
Because those things did not exist.
So nothing that was code of conduct or parts of your contract, there was no violations.
No, we would go.
It was just your feelings.
We went above and beyond. At the beginning of the school year, my principal came to me and said, "Hey, we're short staffed. Do you mind taking over these gen ed classes? Mind you, I have IEPs." The one thing I said, okay. I didn't argue. She said, "Yeah, we're going to have somebody come and decorate the room." Nobody decorated the room. So the kids are in there for a good majority of the beginning of the school year.
Government-funded classroom.
It's looking crazy. Now, eventually, the other teachers came in, the subs, and they would come and decorate or whatever. But I never, ever had any pushback because I understood the circumstance to which we were in.
Sure.
I've always done what I'm supposed to do. I think we all have. We've never had any kickback. So yeah, to answer the question a few minutes ago, I wasn't concerned about it. Whatever happened was going to happen.
Right.
It just is what it is.
Like the bullying of it all, like the way, the tactics that you know, tried to come at it. You know, I think we went from being great effective teachers to, okay, let me attack you because you're the villain now, you know. Just, you know, certain things like, you know, we had talked about earlier, like your principal may not renew your contract. I mean, like I said at the beginning of the year, I knew I wasn't coming back. Actually, I wasn't supposed to come back at the end of the school year in May of 2022. I really wasn't supposed to return. I was facing anxiety then. So I really wasn't supposed to come back because there's a lot of things that had happened that school year. But I said, you know, I'm going to push forward. And I came back. You know, like I said, we returned. Didn't know we were supposed to return. It wasn't clear. Then I ended up had the week we were supposed to return. Like the next day, I had an upper respiratory infection.
Okay, I remember that.
Sick as a dog. And you email did protocol, and they try not to pay me.
Ridiculous.
Actually, the person whoever put my time in, because it wasn't me.
Right.
They put my time in for 2 days as excuse without pay. And my husband, you know, we talked about they're starting to be petty, which I end up getting paid for, you know, because the people at the county, they were fair. So,
I will say that, yeah,
right, they were fair. Okay. So, you know, I did, you know, receive what was belonged to me. But yeah, that whole situation took me out. I had to take some time off.
So you were out. I was still in. So I continued to go to school every day.
Was it different? Like, were you treated differently when you got there?
So my coworkers know.
Coworkers know?
They wanted to know where I had been. It was more so like, where have you been?
What about administrators? Like, were you treated different by them?
I think so. Yeah, specifically our administrator. The kids were I mean, we couldn't even move down the hallway. They were so happy to see us. But as far as my admin, this particular person wasn't as friendly. I wouldn't say he was nasty, but he wasn't as playful
as he was before.
So you could definitely tell a change and
you know, yeah, but still cordial and still, you know, doing what this, you know, they're supposed to be doing.
Okay.
At the time, I was trying to put together a garden for the school. And I kind of figured I wasn't coming back, but I said, well, let me go ahead and just get it started because once again, it's about the kids. So I worked on that. I put the beds together. I put them outside. We did our little garden thing. So we're still doing that for the school because at the end of the day, when people look at the school, they're going to look at the principal, not the teacher who did it. Right. So, you know, I do all of that. And everything was just back to normal again for the most part.
Well, you know, so there was a running joke, I guess, at school since we had did the luau. They had said we were out. We had went to Hawaii.
We had gone to Hawaii.
Girl.
That's why we were out.
And did.
But what was funny was that during Teacher Appreciation Week, it was a luau theme.
Oh my God, we gave inspiration. What?
They had a luau theme for the week. So I thought that was kind of cute.
That was real cute.
That was really cute.
I love it. I love it when we can inspire others.
So let's get to the point where we're talking about contracts.
Positions got changed. Yeah. Positions got changed at school. So, you know, quiet as it's kept, you know, a lot of things we did shake up.
Oh yeah.
We shook some things up there.
For the better, I think
that's what's important, an important takeaway. I still want to understand how this was my fault, but we'll get there. But I do think that the important takeaway
I don't think we have time for that.
But I do think an important takeaway really is speaking up does make a difference. Sitting as an educator, we're teachers. We're always like sitting in the classroom. We're the ones that have the most direct impact, like in both directions. And I don't think that enough teachers speak up and say, "Hey, this is what's going on." And if you have to put it out publicly, do that. But say something, because sitting there
but it wasn't about them specific. And see, that's the thing. Again, it wasn't about them specifically. It's just that they happened in some situations with the things that how they were operating at the school. They fell in those categories as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
But,
right. They fell right in.
It is what it is. But I still think it is important to band together and make waves where you see issues, whether they're within your school or systemically. If you don't say anything, people think it's the status quo. And I think that's what we see right now with teachers in education.
Yeah.
So, I mean, for me, we're using our platform. Like the previous teacher in that said District of the Year, they really said some of the similar things. Mm-hmm. And if you see your door is revolving, you shouldn't be attacked, but you should want to get to the surface. If you're, a true leader, what is going on? What is wrong with my people? Because let's just keep it real. A podcast for a few months, and if you've had a high turnover year after year, or, unpleasant teachers, people not happy at work, we're not going to put that on a podcast. We're not going to put that on the climate at the school. You have to really look within yourself and look within your leadership or your school's culture and see, what am I doing wrong and how can I change that?
Well, when every teacher, and we're going to go into what teachers can do if they are investigated, but every person that is employed by the district has a file. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I went a step further. We both did to see what was in our file, which is every email, every everything. It's our investigation. Is the person who's made the
initial claims, the whole conversation,
everything.
Ooh, I want to know who.
So in my file, there was something that really stood out to me, and it said it was between the principal and the investigator. And in the file, it said that our podcast, she had noticed that at the faculty meetings that the climate was different. Like we were a little bit more dismissive. We seemed a little bit like we didn't care. That had been going on since I came to the school and was subbing. The disgruntledness, the kind of sadness
like
of teachers. Cloud, that had been there since I stepped into the school. Now, not with amongst us because we were like a family, but just being there. Most of the teachers did not want to be there, and I couldn't understand why, because this is the first time that I'm coming into the school. Right. So it's not the podcast, and that's the delusion that you're not taking responsibility, and why so many of your teachers are leaving.
Well, I mean,
it's a mass exodus,
right? But I think it goes back to even when I signed my initial contract to go there, and it was said to me
that was in the investigation file as well.
Some snow cone situation.
What you said?
What about
what
how
you
when
I
say?
What is the snow cone? That was
when I said when I signed my contract and she said, hey, every 3 or 4 years we just have a bunch of teachers left that just a bunch of teachers leave. That was in there?
Yeah.
But how my words in your file? What I got to do with
because you were a part of the podcast. Saying that those were things that offended the climate or affected the climate of the school.
Is it true
that we have a high, or at the previous school there was a high teacher turnaround?
I mean, she said it.
Pre-COVID?
She told me.
Yes.
I didn't know. I had done nothing but sub there at the time.
Well,
but she told me I would have known that because I wasn't there. So how would I know? But it was true. They left this year too. That's okay.
Well, this at the end of the day, like you said, if you are the leader of a school, you have to check in with your teachers and to see how they're doing. How are they feeling? Don't just give us a peace room or a Zen room and expect that to just be it. Mm-hmm. No, the classroom sizes are too big, which I mean, they can't really help. So let me scratch that. The discipline, if there's no place to put children, if there is no strong administration, then it's going to be hard for us to teach. We're not going to want to be there. We're not going to fight with these kids every single day. Yeah. We're not doing it. We're just going to leave.
Writing referrals and you bring them back to the teacher and you put
that's not good
back
leadership.
Into the room.
That's not good
What
leadership.
is that saying?
It's
not girls run the world. It's kids.
Kids run the world.
Mm-hmm. And where I'm from, kids are kids.
They're children.
So, that's it.
Yeah.
So how would you ask? What would you tell?
Let us. But we didn't get written up.
Okay.
We returned back to work. I didn't. I did not return back to work because of health reasons. However, we did not get our license suspended.
Right.
We
couldn't. There was no reason for us. That's
absolutely
our license still active. So yeah.
Right. So we are, of course, we're here. We're thriving.
Ain't no stopping the train.
We're very happy at other schools this year. And that's all I'll say.
It is what it is. You can't stop the show.
So what can teachers expect if they are slapped with an investigation that's not criminal? Because I mean, if you do something criminal, that's on you. That's absurd. I
think it's really like if you don't violate. Because if you violate like a code of ethics, then there's nothing you can do. If you violate, like if you go against your contractual obligations, then there's nothing you can do.
Absolutely.
So I do think the first thing is to know what that is and understand that it can change it can change, but it has to be publicly acknowledged and provided to you again. If there's a change in your code of ethics, I do know that. And your contract cannot change without during the school year unless you are informed and you agree and you sign. But read your actual contract because I think teachers we get it in an email and then you just click to sign and you don't even check. But sometimes year to year, that new contract is your notice of changes within your contract. That is all the notice that I know in Georgia, that's all the notice that districts are required to provide you at all. I checked into that before. So first thing is just know what you're agreeing to when you become an educator or in every year when you sign that contract. Know what it says and be sure that when you sign, you really do agree with what is contained within and you understand what it means.
And just keep your documents, especially, if you're doing something in the realms that you think, you may not think that it's, something that's bad, but if you think maybe I might get a phone call, but just it's just good practices to keep up with your stuff like evaluations, which you can always, your evaluations are on Georgia Keys. So wherever school you go to, they can be able to pull it up. And, that's the good part about, this situation. Nothing could, be made up because it was already there.
Yeah.
Our evaluations, which were good, and just, you could check your file as a teacher on the GASP, PSC.
Georgia PSC.
Yeah, you could check your file and see what's there.
You sure
and
can.
get a copy of your HR file.
Yep.
See what see what's in there.
And you can print your contracts.
Yeah, make sure you read it.
You should have a copy. I have a copy of every contract that I've signed, and I have a copy of the code of ethics. Every time
look
it changes,
at the handbook. I know we sign off on it every year, and some of us do not really look. But it's stuff in there that's going to help you outside of. If I'm going to the investigation, you need to know about your contracted time and what goes into that. It's just a lot of stuff, if you read the fine print.
And if you are pulled in for an investigation, you'll probably get an email telling you not to report to work the next day.
Don't
do it. You'll probably go up to the county. They'll probably talk to you, ask you, why do you think you're here?
You don't know.
I don't know. You tell me, right? So then you'll probably discuss it or whatever, depending on what the offense may be to them. Because principals do get offended. Sometimes people do get offended and they have to investigate it if there is a complaint. They'll probably have you on a sheet of paper write down what your side of the story is. You give the paper to them and then they will call you. You don't have to worry about keep calling them. They will call you when the investigation is over. If it is paid administrative leave, then you just wait for them to call you back. I would say it again, if you haven't violated anything within your code of ethics, if you really didn't do anything wrong, just know that it is going to work out. It always does. Things do happen for a reason. I wouldn't say stress out too much about it.
Because you can. It
because
does.
It can
a
be
little anxiety for you, like, what's going to happen or, especially if you are not financially able to sustain if you feel like you may, be let go. And to be honest, they're not going to let you go if you haven't did something like that's, you know, having, if it's not ridiculous, crazy, but know that you have protection as well.
Yeah, we're going to link.
You have protection.
We're going to link the different.
You have to pay for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you know, that's a good point.
Yeah, we are going to link them down at the bottom, the different type of legal options that teachers can have to protect, you know, legal protection. You can call and ask. I know there's one, there are several of them. We'll put them at the bottom, but, and they are affordable monthly. So before, you know, at the beginning of the school year, just going ahead and just get it, because you never know what can happen.
Especially now. I think I think just the climate of education right now with all these book bans and all the Don't Say Gay bills and all these different things, especially those of us in the South where we have the no union states. So here, Florida, South Carolina is another one. We don't have the protection of a union, of a teachers union. So we can join, groups, organizations, but we don't have the protections of like teachers in, say, New York or Minnesota, where they have a union. So they have built-in protections. So we have a group that fights for them, because that's happening to teachers more and more now, where we're seeing that they're being terminated for things. And so I think it is, to your point, Joy, it's important to go ahead and do these things preliminarily, because you just never know if you're reading a book like what the teacher in Georgia now, where she just read a book that was already available that the kids went and picked up from the book fair, and now she's got to fight for her, you know, for her job. But
I do want to say one more thing before we close out. If you are given an investigation, you have two options. You can either resign, or what you're going to get is a letter from the district for a non-renewal, which will show up on your, it's not like a record or anything, but if you do apply for other schools in that same district, for example, you may have to explain, hey, I have a non-renewal for this reason. And they could hire you, they could not hire you. But I mean, to be honest, again, if it's not criminal, that's not going to be a big of an issue, especially if your evaluations are on point, your relationship with the students are on point. You know, you're doing everything that you're needing to do. So you could resign. You just go ahead and get it out the way, or you could do a non-renewal. No, we're not lawyers. We don't give any legal advice. That's a disclaimer. But this is our experience, and these are just the pitfalls that you can fall into and the options that you do have. And you can look for more information with the legal services that we'll provide at the bottom in the comments, in the box at the bottom.
In the description. We got you. In the
description.
Got you. It'll be in there. Look below. It'll be in there.
Well, we do hope that this has been very informative for anyone that's, you know, thinking that, you know, that's an educator and you're thinking about starting a podcast, or if you're thinking about
social media,
doing something outside of teaching. We have discussed or talked about on a previous episode about teachers in social media. And we're, you know, got an episode coming up about teachers in business. So we hope that you are following us, that you have subscribed to our YouTube channel or wherever you receive your podcast. We are there. We want to thank you for listening in. And as we normally say, bye.